Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I get restless underneath the stillness, and I bet if you're honest, you do too. I'm Kim Gross, and I'm the host of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. And last week on Masks Off, I talked about how we can tend to go to this place of getting very busy, distracting ourselves with being productive, our checklists, whatever we have going on, in order to avoid uncomfortable feelings. And this week, I want to talk about restlessness, which is like a cousin or a sister to being busy, wearing the busy mask. And restlessness is a feeling of being fidgety. It can feel like this internal hum that you might have, but you don't really understand what that's all about. And if you are listening to this podcast, then most likely you are a recovering, or you are a people pleaser and or perfectionist. And I just want to share with you that restlessness is not random. It's actually a signal. So what is restlessness exactly? I'm going to explain. So it is a protective strategy. Our nervous systems become activated, and it is a coping strategy, and it's a way to avoid the stillness, because very often, just like I talked about last time with being busy, that when we are still long enough, our unmet needs or emotions come to the surface, and we don't like that feeling. So I want to share with you what has personally come up for me this week. On Tuesday, a few days ago, I was doing some kickboxing in my basement, and I was kicking the heavy bag, and I kicked it like the wrong way. I kicked it once, and then the second time I went to kick the heavy bag, the way that the bag came back at me and the angle of my foot, my toe hit it at the wrong angle. And it was excruciatingly painful. I'm not gonna freaking lie. And so it turned all black and blue, and it was just very painful, and I couldn't barely walk on it for a couple of days. Not only that, but I'm here in upstate New York at my house for the holidays. Thus, you can see my lights in the background if you're on YouTube. And it is, can I just tell you that it is freaking cold here. It's been in the mid-20s, and the windshield is making it feel like it's in single digits. So I'm a big wuss when it comes to cold weather. And between the cold weather and hurting my toe and not being able to work out or really leave the house, I didn't leave the house for 2 total days. And why do I share this story with you? I'm sharing this story with you because I want to tell you how the restlessness was in full force for me at times. And I kept feeling this compulsive urge or need to have to do something. I'm like, okay, let me go wrap some Christmas presents, or okay, let me go do the dishes, or let me scroll on my phone. And I was having a really hard time being present until I was aware, and then I took myself through my own process, and then I worked with it, and it was easier. I won't say it was perfect, but what I can say is this is what it can feel like for you in your body if restlessness is at play. So it can feel like a racing mind. My mind was racing for sure. It can feel like you have to have this urge to do something. Maybe you get this urge that you have to clean your apartment, or you have to clean the house. Or you might, this is a tricky one, you might not even notice or think of this as being a way that restlessness is showing up for you. But planning can, like, nonstop planning, right? Planning for the future, planning out your day. I will do this with my checklist, my list. I'll make a list in the morning and I'll plan out everything. And I know that's my way of coping so that I don't have too much quiet time or downtime. And then you may have difficulty being present, or you may feel like you're just off in some way, but you don't know exactly why. So why does restlessness even happen in the first place? For one, our childhood conditioning is a big culprit for this. And especially if you feel like you have some perfectionistic tendencies, which, by the way, after doing this podcast for 5.5 years and talking with many people, I'm beginning to believe that very few of us don't have perfectionistic tendencies. So many perfectionists have learned at an early age that if you were just being still or idle, that it was unsafe. Or if you were bored, it was super uncomfortable. Now, let me share this. I'm going to be 100% honest with you and say that I was so uncomfortable with boredom when I was a kid, boredom / AKA stillness. And so much so that when I was a mom and my kids were young, and whenever they were bored, and they would come to me and literally say, I'm bored, I don't know what to do. It would make me feel so freaking uncomfortable. It was as if, oh my God, I got to do something about this. Felt like we were being attacked or robbed. Like I had to do something to make sure that they would not be bored. And I recognize now, in hindsight, that was not a healthy thing for me to do as their mom, and they are most likely going to pay some kind of price for that, I'm sure. I know for certain that my daughter is a perfectionist as well, recovering perfectionist, and I'm sure that she feels very unsafe with stillness. The other thing that we learn in our childhoods as a recovering perfectionist is, and I shared this one last week, so by all means, you can check that episode out as well if you want to hear more about how our productivity equals worthiness. In our minds, we think that being super productive makes us more valuable. Let's face it, how often have you heard someone, or maybe you even said it yourself, where you judge or you criticize a family member that is not doing very much in their life? Maybe they're struggling to get a job, or they don't even try to get a job, and so they're just sitting home and like doing nothing, or they're not making a lot of money. So we end up judging and criticizing, either outwardly or inwardly, that wow, they're not a productive member of society. Like, how many times have we heard that saying? So there's this belief system out there that if you are not productive, you are not valuable and you're not worthy. So that's a problem. And then also you may have learned in childhood that your emotions were overwhelming. So again, just like I described a moment ago about the boredom, where I said to you that it was really overwhelming for me to feel my own boredom, but then when my kids were bored as well. So it was just too overwhelming. And so then, consequently, restlessness becomes this buffer between me and the deeper emotion that I was never taught to hold. Or same for you. It's a buffer between you and some deeper feelings, deeper emotions that you were not taught how to feel or how to even hold space for them. So the other reason that restlessness comes in is, just piggybacking on what I just said, is that we have a fear. We have such a fear of feeling our feelings. I know for sure, growing up, I was not taught how to feel my feelings, how to forget about freaking feeling my feelings. I couldn't even identify most of my feelings. We just didn't do it. And I think many families operate this way. Many families just take big feelings and emotions and act as if they don't exist. How do we act like they don't exist? We keep moving. We keep being protective. We keep being busy, right? So we're afraid that if we slow down and we stop moving, that these deeper, bigger feelings of loneliness, of sadness or shame, or even a need for connection might come to the surface. And we don't want to appear as if we are needy humans. Like, I think we avoid that with a 10-foot pole. I know that I have resisted my whole life coming off as someone who is extra needy. There's just such a negative connotation to people who are super needy. But let me tell you something. I'm going to say something right now that might not sit well with you, but I believe it's the truth. We are all freaking needy on some level. And so that's another thing, is that we just allow restlessness to become a smokescreen, which is that if I keep on moving, I don't have to feel and I don't have to appear as if I'm needy. Another reason that restlessness becomes our go-to is when we have, I mentioned earlier, nervous system dysregulation. Okay, what do I mean by that? So restlessness can often appear as being the more sympathetic, like our nervous system is in a sympathetic state, which is fight or flight. When we're in parasympathetic, that's when our nervous system tends to be calmer and regulated and slower. But when we are in this restlessness state, we're in this like fight or flight, and the body is learning that I have to just keep moving. I have to stay up and I have to be on all the time, on, because it wasn't safe to just relax and be. Another reason that restlessness can come in to our lives and be a coping strategy for us is that it's a sign that we are actually disconnected from our true needs. And this is what I was saying a moment ago. So the restlessness could be a smokescreen for the fact that you have a need that is not being met by you or by someone else. It could mean that a boundary has been crossed and you're feeling unsettled. It could mean that you're just, in general, you're misaligned. You're not in alignment in your life, so you have this restlessness. Or you're avoiding something within yourself. So that's another reason why restlessness becomes a coping strategy. So how does it show up in our everyday lives? I already mentioned a few of them, but I'll just repeat again. One is being busy, overworking. Just think about the people, and it could be you. You could be this person. You could be going to work all day long, and you have a regular job. You work 9 to 5, 40, 50 hours a week. And then, maybe you're going to school part-time at the same time, and you have to do schoolwork. Or if then you're trying to work out and you're trying to get your groceries done. You're trying to make sure that you have healthy food. You're just overworking, you're going. Another way that it can show up in your everyday life is if, as I said before, you're planning and then you replan and you're planning all the time. And you have this energy of, I can't sit still. I have to do something. I have to be doing something. You have to fill up your time. The moment you see an opening, you immediately have to fill it. Let's say you see that you have the afternoon free on Saturday or Sunday, and you start to think about the weekend. Like, okay, what am I going to do? I have to call so-and-so. Let me call Sarah and see if she wants to go for lunch, or let me go and go shopping. You might go shopping, or you are needing constant noise. Maybe the TV has to be on all the time, or the music is always playing. And there's this nonstop stimulation because the quietness is like running your fingers down a chalkboard. It just makes you cringe, and you just avoid the silence and you avoid the solitude. And this is what I shared with you in the episode that I recorded last week, because I shared how when I was down in Florida and I had a few days to myself, and I tried intentionally to not have the TV on as much and just not having my family around. And I was noticing how much more silence there was and how much solitude. And then even when I went to the beach, I went there for 15 or 20 minutes, and I could feel myself getting super antsy. Like, all right, that's enough of this. Been here, done that. And then I said, okay, nope, let's stay for 15 more minutes. And so then I would try to ground myself by just looking at how amazed I was that how the ocean and the sky meet, and it looks like they're actually touching. So I'm focusing my attention on that. And then I was watching the little birds run across the sand, and then I would watch the waves come in, or I would feel the warm sun on my skin. So I would ground myself. And then when I grounded myself and I was present, I was fine. But then my thoughts would go off and wander again, and I would be stuck in my head, and I would start to feel antsy and, okay, I've got to go. And then I would just say, nope, 5 more minutes. And then eventually I ended up staying for an hour, a little over an hour, which was great, because then I was practicing the grounding and sourcing myself. But then I had to go clean my car because it's like, all right, what am I going to do now? Done with the beach. What else do I have planned? And so the restlessness came back in, and then I went and washed my car for a half an hour. So I share this to really help you see that this is so normal. If you do this and you're aware that you do this, it's very normal. Now, on the other hand, you might do all these strategies, all these coping strategies, and not realize that it is a protective strategy, that it's interfering with your ability to be present. Now, that doesn't mean that having restlessness is necessarily a flaw. It's not a flaw. It's actually a gift for us because it's a messenger. It's revealing to you and to me where you might be emotionally depleted or disconnected. And I know for sure that's what I was feeling that week when I was in Florida. I was feeling disconnected because I was spending so much time alone. So it's actually like this messenger. It's letting you know where you need something, And it's this doorway that opens up where you can go in to do deeper healing work if you're willing to just pause for a little bit. So this is where I use my 5-step power pathway to move through restlessness. In fact, I use my 5-step power pathway to move myself through every trigger, every emotional angst, if you will, that I have. Anything that comes up for me, I use my 5-step power pathway. So the very first step of this pathway is to, number one, you have to be aware of the pattern. And it's just like I said a few moments ago, you may not even be aware of the fact that the way that you're operating is a pattern. You might think that it's just who you are and it's part of your personality, but the truth is it's not. It's a pattern and it's a coping strategy. And so what you want to do is just notice it without any judgment. And then you can even ask yourself 2 questions. 1, what are you trying not to feel right now? What feeling are you trying to avoid? Or you could ask yourself, what am I distracting myself from? And then maybe just really journal on that and really reflect, if you will. If you really want to heal from restlessness and you want to feel better, you have to really take the time to really go inward and listen. And then also with being aware of your pattern is to become aware of the behaviors. What are your particular behaviors? Is it cleaning? Is it over planning? Is it overthinking? Is it scrolling on your phone? What is it for you when you get into restlessness? What does it look like for you? Because for each of us, it might be a little bit different.
Hey, it's Kim here, interrupting your regularly scheduled podcast episode to let you know about an opportunity to go deeper into this work. I invite you to head over to Amazon.com and pick up your copy of my book, Free to Be: A Pathway to Inner Liberation. If you are looking to unhook from people pleasing and perfectionistic patterns, if you're looking to have a better way of identifying your patterns and then how you can unhook so you can be free to step outside your comfort zone, free to have more meaningful relationships in your life, free to be your true self without hiding behind a mask any longer. If you desire any of this, then I encourage you to pick up your copy. And if you enjoy my book as much as I loved writing it, please go on over and leave a review on Amazon. You can leave a star review or written review. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast episode.
The second step of the 5-step power pathway is ownership. It's taking ownership, which means what? It means taking responsibility for how you are contributing to the pattern or to the cycle. You may not have caused it in the first place. You didn't certainly mean to have this pattern, but it is playing out in your life. And so it's like, how are you contributing to the fact that it keeps existing in your life? And rather than blaming circumstances, perhaps you might just say, I'm just super busy and that's why I do this. Instead of blaming your circumstances, you can just take ownership that it is up to you and you alone to change the pattern. And then finally, just to say, what is this part of me trying to help me with? And am I willing to take the responsibility to listen? Okay. Third step of my 5-step power pathway. And here's the thing, if you have been with me for a while, my 5-step power pathway, I've shared it many times on the podcast. And I just want to say, I hope that it's helpful for you. I hope that you have tried to use it in your life. I hope you have tried to implement it in your life. And I would love to hear from you if you feel like this pathway has been a resource for you. I'd love to hear that. Okay, back to the third step. The third step is where you go from your mind down into your heart and into your body. And this is where I always say the work really happens. This is where you start to shift because you're healing. You're starting to heal a wound that was created in childhood. And it can sometimes be the hardest step, I'm not gonna lie, but it's the most profound. And it's where the transformation actually takes place. So you can just even allow yourself like 60 to 90 seconds of quiet. It won't even take much. I promise you, it will not take that long, where you just allow yourself some silence and then notice the sensation in your body. Like, where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your jaw or your shoulders? And once you notice where it is in your body, can you sense what the emotion is beneath? Is it disconnection? Is it loneliness? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling grief or anger? If restlessness had a voice, and this is really key right here. So hear me out on this. If restlessness had a voice, what would it say? What needs your attention right now? And then just give yourself a moment or two to just wait and see what comes up. And if it doesn't feel like anything's coming to you right away, it might take some time for you to do this over and over, especially if you're new. If this isn't a practice that you're used to, it might take a little bit of time for you to actually tap in and connect with what's underneath. And I really want to kind of preface that and underscore that, because I've been doing this for so long now that it comes second nature to me. So I have to remember to say that to you, that it might take some time. You might not be able to tap in immediately. Okay. The fourth step is to embrace the wounded part of yourself. This is where your younger self, your wounded self, is needing more of your compassion, more of your love, and where it's this part of you, this younger wounded part, is craving something. Like, what does it want? What does it need? Are you craving safety? Are you craving attention or support? Maybe you don't feel like you're supported. Maybe you feel like you're the one who's always supporting your friends. You're showing up for everyone in your life. But when you're having a hard time, no one's there for you. So you feel like you want or need more support, or maybe you want to feel like you belong. Maybe you don't have a lot of community and you feel isolated. You feel alone. And so you're needing more belonging and connection. Okay, so here's what you do then. You could just simply put your hand on your heart if you're willing, and just say to this younger version of yourself, I'm here for you. I hear what you're saying. And you don't have to be busy in order for me to love you. Or if you don't want to say that, you could say, I see that you're struggling right now. And I see that this is really hard. Something's really upsetting you. And I'm here for you. Why don't we slow down? and see what's going on. Something along those lines. You have to figure out your own version and your own dialogue. So once you give yourself some of that nurturing and some of that compassion and grace, then it's time to take radical responsibility, which is the fifth step of my 5-step power pathway. And this is where you can then start to make more aligned choices. You're more grounded. You might be in that parasympathetic state a little bit more. And for me, like in the last 2 days when I said I couldn't do anything and I was stuck inside because it's so freaking cold, after I worked through my 5-step power pathway, I was able to like finally get to a place where I was really appreciating the fact that I could just rest more and I could be still. Like I remember the times, do you ever remember when you were in school and you got sick? Let's say you had the stomach bug or the flu or something. I especially remember in high school because I was such a perfectionist, performer, and pleaser in high school that being able to rest or be still was non-existent. Let me just tell you, non-existent. But when I got sick, that was the permission slip that I needed to be able to just do nothing and watch TV and watch movies and have my mom make me tea and sit on the couch with me. And I really so cherished those times, I'm not gonna lie. And sometimes I just wish that I, throughout my adult, when I would get into being busy and productive, just wanting to go back to when I had no responsibility, when I was sick. So what I'm trying to say is that when I hurt my toe, it was similar. When I had to just rest, I'm like, my body is telling me that it needs to rest right now. And once I started to embrace it, I was chill then. I was like, okay, I can take a break. It's okay. I'm not going to become some lazy ass person that sits on the couch and watches TV and eats bonbons all day. That's the big thing that I'm afraid of people judging me for that would happen. So then I can just take care of my body. And I was able to slow down intentionally. And then even when I was wrapping the presents, although that was quote unquote being productive, but it was different from any other time that I wrapped Christmas presents because I turned on my music. I love me some Mary J. And I put on Mary J. and I was just vibing to the music and wrapping gifts. And so it was definitely from a different energy than from this restless energy that I have to go do something. Okay, so let's land this freaking plane. And what I want to end by saying is that restlessness isn't something that you have to get rid of or you have to eradicate it. That's not the message that I'm trying to share with you. I'm trying to help you to understand it and to know why it shows up for you and then what you can do about it, such as using my 5-step power pathway anytime that you notice that restlessness is coming in. So again, the goal is not necessarily to master this immediately. It may take some time, and it's important just to have so much awareness and so much compassion for yourself, especially if you're attempting to go through the 5-step power pathway and you're like, okay, this is not freaking working for me. I don't know what she's talking about. And I'll say this, if that is the case, if you're like, oh, I really want to understand how to use this 5-step power pathway, but I have no freaking clue what Kim's even talking about, I want to say this. There are 2 things that you could do to really learn and understand this pathway, which is really just a process for getting through shit, right? It just helps us to get through the shit in our life. There are 2 things you can do. One is if you are the type of person where you'd like to do things on your own and at your own pace, I do have an online course that is solely centered around learning the 5-step power pathway. But if you're thinking, okay, I want to learn the 5-step power pathway, but I would love to have support while I'm doing it, then I would say you can reach out and I can help support you through coaching you. And you can just reach out to me on my website, kimgrosscoaching.com, kimgrosscoaching.com. You can book a call right there. And finally, I'll say 2 more things I'll say. One is, if you're listening to this episode and you're not a regular to Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists, and you're thinking to yourself, geez, I don't know, am I really a perfectionist? Am I a people pleaser? I really don't know. I have a quiz on my website as well. So I invite you to go take that quiz. It'll help you to get a clearer idea as to whether you are a perfectionist and or a people pleaser. And then finally, I will say that if you are in your 20s, anywhere from like 22 to 30, and you're listening to this episode and you're saying, oh my God, I so know what she's talking about with having restlessness or being super busy or productive, and you just want more community where you can get support from other women your age, I have a community called Real and Unfiltered, and it's just for young women. We meet every week and we support each other, and we go through the process of working through some of these patterns. And if that is something you're interested in, you can email me, kim@kimgrosscoaching.com. If you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments section. Just say, hey, Kim, I'd love to hear more about your community. In any event, I just want to say this, that the holidays are around the corner in less than 2 weeks. And then I know that it's a time of the year when we can be super busy or feeling restless. You could really feel a lot of restlessness around the holidays, especially if you grew up in a dysfunctional home or you have a lot of dysfunctional family and friends around you, which let me just say, most of us do. Most of us do. This is very normal. And a lot of times the holidays can be super stressful. You might have a parent that just is relentless with the criticism and the judging, and then there's just all this bickering back and forth and people being fake, and you're just feeling super anxious. Your nervous system is very dysregulated, and because it is, then you go into this coping strategy of feeling restless, then you have to get super busy. What I want to stress is, maybe number one, listen to this episode again. If you made it all the way to the end, I would say maybe re-listen to it and see if you can apply or implement some of the things that I had talked about here so that you can have a more peaceful, a more joyous, and abundant holiday season. That's what I hope for you, because again, especially if you're in your 20s listening, for whoever's listening, I wish this for all of you. But in particular, if you're in your 20s, I so wish that I had the information that I have now when I was in my 20s, so that I could start doing this inner work to make the changes so that I didn't have to struggle for decades. And that's why I've created the community for young women. It's to help you guys get ahead of the curve so that you don't have to have decades of this. I'm 57 now. And again, if I had this information in my 20s, I wouldn't say it would have been perfect, but I can tell you, I can promise you that it would have been a lot different than it was.
Hey, Kim Gross here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I invite you to hop on over to my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. Right there on the front page, there's a quiz for people pleasers and perfectionists. You can find out if you have tendencies. You can also get into my newsletter where you will be given valuable content every week on different topics I share here in the podcast. And if you really did enjoy this episode, if you found it helpful, if you found it valuable, please go to, if you're on YouTube, go and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, then I invite you to leave a review. You can even do a star review. It doesn't have to be a written review. If you know of someone who can benefit from this podcast or this particular episode, please share it with them. I'll see you next time.